what do you think are the chances that Ukraine's eventually going to be part of NATO?
Non-existent.
Non-existent?
Yes.
That's not going to happen.
No. And this is the problem. We don't seem to understand that if we continue to insist that whatever remains of Ukraine become part of NATO, we're going to see hundreds of thousands of Russian troops on the Polish border. They're just going to roll right across Ukraine. It will not stop until they hit the Polish border and the Romanian border. That's very clear. That's not what he wants. And I keep trying to explain this to people. If you know anything about Western Ukraine, I grew up with people from Western Ukraine. They do not want anything to do with the Russians. And Putin knows that. He doesn't want to run the place, doesn't want to govern it. He just doesn't want it to be a platform for attack against Russia, which is what we tried to turn it into. I also think the majority of Ukrainians that are still there, and maybe even the majority that are away, they may not like Russians, but I don't think they support this war. And the reason I say that is that if you go back to the election that brought Zelensky to power, when he was picked up from nowhere as a comedian and sponsored by Kolomoisky, who's a very powerful oligarch in Ukraine, he ran on a peace platform. He said, if I'm elected, I'll make peace with Russia. Well, virtually everybody, something like 89%, went out and voted for it. They wanted peace with Russia. There were only very few people in the far west of Ukraine that didn't support that. So I don't think Zelensky is by any stretch of the imagination as widely supported as people think. And, you know, you talk about their situation right now. He has press gangs. Press gangs are groups of people that go out and forcibly drag Ukrainians into the Ukrainian military because they need manpower. He's now doing that in the far western portions of Ukraine where he said he wouldn't do it, in Galicia and in the Carpathian, what used to be called the Carpathian Military District. Ukrainians are leaving. Ukrainians are moving out. There are reports now that Ukrainians are actually stoning and in some cases shooting at these press gangs from the Ukrainian army in western Ukraine, that they don't want to go to war. They don't want to fight. We're getting reports that platoon and company-size elements down in southern Ukraine are defecting. They're simply saying, look, we've had it. We can't do this anymore, and they're coming across and surrendering. And very, very smartly, the Russians from the beginning have treated all of the Ukrainian prisoners very, very well. They have not harmed them. They have not abused them or brutalized them. They facilitated prisoner exchanges, whereas we've got videotape of Ukrainian soldiers kneecapping with AK-47s, Russian knees of soldiers that are in captivity. We have video of them executing because the Ukrainian soldiers that did it actually posted it on YouTube, on the internet. So he's run a very good campaign in the sense that he's made it very clear, we don't want to kill you. We're not really the enemy. We want this to end too. And it has had an effect inside Ukraine that we are not hearing about. These things are not reported to us in the Western media because it undermines the narrative.
Did you see the Wall Street Journal story about a few days ago of Wagner mutiny revives U.S. fears over control of Russia's nuclear weapons? The Wagner paramilitary group failed insurrection in Russia led by Yevgeny has reignited concerns over control of Russia's nuclear arsenal. As U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken put it, anytime you have a major country like Russia that has signs of instability, that's something of concern. Despite these tensions, U.S. officials stated that they detected no irregular activities or changes in alert levels related to Russia's nuclear forces. Is that a real threat, or is that just a, story to exaggerate what's really going on to put fear in the American people?
Absolutely.
Second one.
Yes, absolutely. You're not hearing anything truthful from this administration. And the media is conspiring with the administration to misinform the public. It's simple truth. The same thing's happening in Western Europe. Nobody is being told the truth. The only way to get the truth is to talk to people who are over there on the ground. Fortunately, I have some people who are willing to do that and pass me information. And we forget that there are people in Poland that have grandparents who are Ukrainians living in eastern Ukraine. We forget that there are people who are Slovakian, some are Czech, who actually have brothers-in-law or cousins working in banks in Moscow. In other words, there are people over there that are telling the truth.
Yeah.
I just don't think we're getting it, and I don't see any evidence that that's going to change anytime soon. And that worries me because if we continue to push this false narrative and we make it abundantly clear that there will be no negotiation, which is what we're effectively saying. Right now, Putin has the following choice. You can pull all your forces out of Ukraine. You can prepare to commit suicide in public and remove yourself from office, and then we'll talk. I mean, that's absurd. There's no chance of any of that happening. So where are we headed? I think we're headed to lots of Russian troops on the Polish border unless someone wakes up in Europe. And I think it could happen in Germany and it could happen in France, where those governments are very fragile right now. I think Scholz's approval rating is about 32 or 33%. If they get rid of him and you get a new coalition involving the Alternative for Germany and maybe even the left, on the far left, those two groups are all opposed to this war. And there is no support in the German population for going to war with Russia. If you ask anybody in Germany, are you prepared to suit up and go to the Eastern Front? Everybody says, are you out of your mind? Of course not. If that were to happen, then Putin would have someone he could talk to in Berlin. And Berlin then could conceivably lead us out of this dead-end road. But that hasn't happened yet. And again, I think that's something else that Putin is watching for. I think that's another reason why he's held back.
Hadn't Russia and Germany grown close over energy deals and pipelines? And there was this, wasn't there a story narrative that thanks to the Russians turning off the pipeline as part of the Ukraine conflict, these poor Germans are going to be freezing in the winter. And so aren't they in recent times, fairly dependent on Russia and probably, in a position where it might not be a bad idea to be the moderating voice?
In 1914, Russia and Germany were each other's principal trading partners. In other words, when the war broke out, they were already each other's principal trading partners. Interestingly enough, the British were entirely dependent on the optics industry in Germany for all of its military applications.
Wow.
These things happen. Sometimes dumb ideas become policy without anybody consulting on the wisdom of doing something. In 1941, Russia and Germany were each other's principal trading partners. Germany could not have launched any offensive in the West in 1940 without copious amounts of steel and coal and iron and oil and gas and so forth from Russia. Impossible. Grain poured into Germany. In other words, this is a symbiotic relationship that's been there for a long time. This existed between Prussia and Russia, and the Prussians were always pro-Russian as a result and worked to avoid any conflict. This was Bismarck's argument. The Austrians were less open-minded, but they too sort of shut up and colored because they weren't in a position to do much. My point is, this is a natural relationship. It benefits both sides. We have looked at this and said this is evil and bad because this makes Germany dependent upon Russia. But we forget that Russia was also dependent upon Germany. And what happened in 1941 in July that changed everything? It's called Lend-Lease from the United States. We compensated Russia with everything that it had formerly been receiving from Germany: technology, steel, locomotives, you name it, all the resources. Aluminum, all the precious metals, everything that the communists in Moscow needed to survive the German assault, we started providing immediately in July 1941, and we were not even part of the war. It was illegal, and FDR did that. Now, I'm not here to debate the wisdom of that. That's another subject, but my point is Russia also is dependent on Germany, just as Germany has been dependent on Russia. So the notion that it's a one-way street is just inaccurate and wrong.
Happy 4th of July to you. We have a special event that's coming up with Tom Brady, Mike Tyson, and Will Guidara in Miami, Vol Conference. It'll be August 30th to September 2nd. This weekend for 4th of July, we're running a special. Buy one, get one free. Bring your spouse, bring your business partner, bring your running mate. If you haven't yet registered, click on a link below or above. Get registered. Looking forward to spending 3 days with you in Miami.